to almost November. So we're doing this one week early to accommodate the Wild Ones meeting that's coming up next week. And that's going to be a seed exchange and other shenanigans I'm hearing. So I'm hoping to see everyone there. Marcia, did you want to say anything about what's going on next week? I assume everybody probably knows, but
Yeah, and invitation should be going out momentarily, tomorrow at the latest. But basically, reminders starts at 6:30 for food and drink and seed sharing, and then we'll have a very brief uh, meeting. So don't have to bring seeds to take seeds. Come one, come all.
I have a whole pile of seeds I'm bringing. I'm very excited to rehome them. All right. So this is a Zoom presentation of this month in our native gardens. So we're talking about November, which starts next week. This is hosted by Wild One St. Louis, which also you can find this on their YouTube channel later. And this series is based on a book I wrote called The Wildflower Garden Planner. And you can pick up this book at most St. Louis Wild Ones meetings. And it is almost November, so the season of beauty berries and being grateful for the color green still. I think. So this month we're going to go over what seeds are still left to collect, burning if you can. We have a guest here to talk about frost flowers. We're going to talk about trees as sculpture, decorating with natural materials, backyard bats, preparing for our first hard frost. I think Kalo is going to do a tool sharpening care demonstration, which I'm very excited about. And then we'll talk about nurturing garden soil, bird feeding, tree care and planting, and then color this month. So first up is seed collecting. You'll notice this list has gotten much smaller. So last month was a big seed collecting month. A lot of stuff is gone now, but there's still a lot of asters and goldenrods out there. The gentian is going to seed. I know a lot of places it's still blooming right now, so watch for those seeds. And then also, if you haven't ever collected pipevine seeds, they're really cool looking. They're one of my favorite seed packet. Like it's a capsule with lots of seeds. I should probably count how many seeds are in one capsule at some point, but it's a fun experience. So go look for some pipevine seeds. If you can, it's a good time to think about burning. You shouldn't burn always in fall. You should sort of burn at different times of the year, in that way that like certain plants respond better to fall burnings, certain ones respond better to spring burns, and also insects respond better to different types of burns or different seasons of burns. And also hot and cold burns matter too. So if you are going to burn, make sure that you get permission from your fire department or something before you start burning, or else your neighbors will be very upset with you. So, but if you can, you should do it. And then this is the season for frost flowers. I know there's been a couple out already, and I've asked my friend Darla to talk about frost flowers because she has some great photos and I wanted to show them to you. And this is a very special flower that you can only see this time of year. Do you want to share your screen, Darla?
Trying to.
Is it saying you're not allowed to?
I'm just got the green. Yeah, I'm clicking, but nothing's happening under share.
All right. I made you co-host, so you should probably be able to it now.
All right, let me.
There you go.
All right, let me go to my presentation. All right, here we go. Can everybody see it now?
Yep.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Okay. Um, let's see. So, hi, I'm Darla Price, and I'm with the Master Naturalist Mirror chapter, along with Besa, and I've been doing the Master Naturalist program now for 10 years. This past May, this was my buddy Basil, my dog, so which I miss, but he's still in my
Right.
presentations.
Darla, I'm not seeing it in the slideshow mode. It's in
Oh,
the,
okay. Hold on one second. Let me try it again. Okay, why is it not? Let's see from this current slide. Okay, how about now?
yes, now it is.
All right. All right. So now let me go to my second flower. So, second slide. So they're known as frost flowers, but they're also known as ice flowers. But wanted to tell you they're really not flowers at all, even though they grow from a plant. It is a rare phenomenon that occurs when the air temperatures are below freezing and the soil is moist and unfrozen. So fall is the time of the year that you want to be looking for the frost flowers. The place that I usually go to is Shaw because it's close to me, but I understand that they're also located along rivers and other places in the forest. So what happens is the frost flowers develop when the air temperatures are freezing. The ground is still warm enough for the plant's root system to be active. The plant sap flows from the roots up into the stem. Mostly the stems are square-ish, where the cold water freezes them. When this water then hits the cold air, it freezes, it splits open the stems basically, and as more water is carried up, and this exits through the split of the stem, it freezes these growing ribbons that create and look like a flower. So the common plants that you'll find them on, which isn't in a lot of people's gardens, is white crownbeard, yellow ironweed, and American dittany. So I can't, I don't think I have a hand thing, but how many people have seen frost flowers out of the people that are online? Just by yes or no's? Not hearing. Okay, so this is what a group of frost flowers looks like. And if you look close to it, you can see how the stems are splitting. They almost look like they're standing on four legs if you get really close to them. The one thing you do have to do is you can't really stand up to observe frost flowers. You really need to get down low because they're only 2, 3, 4, if you're lucky, 6 inches off the ground. This picture looks like onions to me, or even garlic bulbs, where you can see it's really dense and it didn't create a lot of ribbon. And it's probably because it didn't have a ton of water. It still expanded, but it didn't ribbon out as much as some of the other pictures that you'll see in some of my photos here. So like this, you can see that it's ribboning out from the stem. The one on the left was approximately 6, 7 inches up the stem. And I don't know why except for being more water, why it would create straight up versus coming out. Some of it probably has to do with wind also, the night that it's freezing, or if there is any wind, of how far out these ribbons go. Here's one you can kind of see. To me, it looks a little bit like cotton candy, like it's whirled around. You can see the lines of the ice. Here, I've got a little backlit on this photo where you can actually see the ice from the backside, and this one's close to getting ready to melt. So the thing about finding frost flowers
is you do need to go when it's freezing. I prefer it to be 26 to 29 degrees opposed to 30 or 32. It seems to, over the years, I seem to find more flowers. And you need to not be afraid of the cold or laying down on your stomach or getting on your knees to take these pictures because they are really close to the ground. This one I know is blurry, but I call this my dogwood flower because it looks like a flowering dogwood. This one is from above. If you look at the top of it, you can see the ice at the top of the stem there that has been broken off, and then the ribbons all out to the bottom that almost looks like a tree root. Here's another view of the inside of half of one. This one I took about 4 years ago. This is a perfect feather, so I call this my feather. Let's see what the next one is. And then they're always grouped together a lot of times. It kind of depends on the night again. So this is what you're going to see when you're walking. So this is me standing up and taking my camera and looking down at the frost flowers. So to actually see the shapes of them and things like that, you need to get down to the ground. Here's one that looks like it split way up and kind of came back down almost a formation instead of going to the top. This one's real thick. Another swirly one almost looks like candy on a stick with the whiskers. And another sideways, little bit blurry. But as you go out, you have to be there early. If you wait until 10 o'clock, most of the time these are going to be melted away. You might get away by 10:30. Just depends on how quickly it warms up. And if sun is hitting them, they will melt right away. This was at Shaw last year. They had actually cut these flowers and burned them. As you can see, the burn tips on them, but they still created the frost flowers because there was enough water in the root system. Couple more. Almost finished. Here's some sun coming in, so you can see them again, the collage. And my favorite one that I took as I'm finishing up here, I took in December 16th, 2016 at Shaw, and it is a perfect heart. Shaw has actually used this in some stuff. And it was only probably 4 inches tall, but I am down on my belly getting this shot. Oops, wrong way. Thank you guys. If there's any questions, I'd love to take them.
Wow.
It's always interesting hiking with Darla because she's like on her belly all the time taking photos of the flowers. And a lot of the flowers photos that Shawnee Tree Reserve uses were Darla's photos. She's out there photographing a lot.
I understood that, well, I don't understand. I've never seen one. I have yellow crown beard. Is it as good as white crown beard?
I don't know for a fact that it is or is not. So Marsha, I can't really say for a fact. I would say if you have it, I looked out a week. There's not any freezing temperatures for the next week to 10 days. But the next time that it's going to freeze, hard freeze, like, 29 degrees, I would go check them out early in the morning between 8 and 10.
And does it only happen once? I mean, the first hard freeze?
It happened several times during the year. It kind of depends on, was it like we just had some a few weeks ago when it got down to 30 degrees. I wasn't able to go take some photos, but I do know some people that did find some at Merrimack State Park. I don't know if Shaw had any that day. I just wasn't able to get there. But it was a moderate freeze and it was only like one night. So if you have 2 nights in a row, that second night, it gets a little colder and sometimes there will be more. They won't, to my knowledge, I can't document this, but I don't think they refreeze in the plant that they already froze in. But if there is enough water in the plant, theoretically, they could do that again. Because it has to do with the sap that's still in the plant and the warm temperatures, and then it freezes and it expands the stem and then it shoots it out the side of the stems.
Thank you.
Making a
welcome.
frost flower doesn't kill the plant, so they can have frost flowers more than once.
The stem would just have to sort of re-solidify, I mean, sort of close in order to hold in.
The stem dies at the frost flower point, but the roots are still alive and they can still push out more water.
I have a question. Do you know how fast they form? Like, is it a very gradual thing or is it kind of a burst?
So when I first discovered a frost flower in 2016, I was trying to research that. There was a video back then. I searched for about 30 minutes a couple of days ago trying to find this video. Some photographer in Tennessee, is all I remember about the video, took a time lapse of a frost flower actually being created. But I could not find it because I was going to link it so you guys could see it. And I'll be honest with you, it was 2016. I don't remember the timeline of how quickly that happened, so I do not have that answer.
I'll see if I can research it.
I just know that the video came out of Tennessee, and the one that I saw was amazing. I mean, I would love to set up a camera to do a time lapse, but I haven't ever been able to do that yet.
Mm.
Nature's wonderful, though. Any other
Yeah,
questions?
The times that I normally see frost flowers is when I'm camping overnight and it freezes, and then you wake up in the morning and there's frost flowers all over the place. And it's very cold.
And you're usually down by a river, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Besa.
Thanks for agreeing to come, and your photos were beautiful, just like I asked for.
All right. Thank you.
Thank-
Thanks,
Thanks for
guys.
inviting Darla, Besa.
All right, are there any other questions at this time for Darla or me? Okay, move on. So these are just some fall pictures. We've got the hydrangea on the right. In the middle is hazelnut, and then left is ashy sunflower, which I know I've warned you all about ashy sunflower before, but it has a really cool fall color. It stands up. It has these very stiff leaves and this gray color. I really enjoy it through the winter. And so Doug Tallamy talks about how, like, if you have non-native plants in your yard, you might as well just have sculptures because they're not doing anything for the environment. But also, like, on the flip side of being a sculpture, like, plants are sculptures too, as well as being useful for the environment. And so I would think of your trees and shrubs as sculpture, and when you're pruning them and placing them, think about how they're going to look as well as how useful they'll be in the environment. Because there's a lot of really cool trees out there. It's very hard to grow a tree like this one pictured, but if you have one, protect it. And sometimes just removing one branch makes it so that you can see into the tree and see the branching structure better and the bark. So coming up towards the end of this month, I'm going to be teaching a wreath making class where we're going to take things out of the garden and maybe some fake ribbons and make holiday wreaths. And so these are some of the ones we made in the past. Of course, I like to add skulls to mine, but they can be more normal wreaths too. And this workshop it's free. It's at Arch Reactor. And I put the link in the chat, which I hope you guys can all see. Let me know if you can't see it because I put it in before you joined. But so that's November 24th. So let me know if you're coming because I only have space for 14 people in the class. And you can also just make a wreath at home. You don't need to come to my class to make a wreath. Or you can just get a vase and fill it with dried plants. Bring the plants in. Okay, backyard bats. So to attract bats, sometimes even better than putting up a bat house like this is don't use pesticides. Bats eat insects, don't kill them. Grow as many bugs as you can. Try to grow bugs that like it, that are out at night so the bats can eat them. So night blooming flowers, light colored flowers, fragrant flowers. Bats they don't land to drink. They can only drink while on the wing, so they have to swoop down to drink. So like a bird bath is not going to cut it for a bat. And a lot of us don't have space to put like a 10-foot pond in our backyard. So hopefully you have a neighborhood creek or something like that. But if you do have space for a 10-foot pond, put one in for the bats. Best way to find bats is look for bat poop. In my experience, it looks like mouse poop. So you might be walking around your house and think that you have a mouse poop issue, and then you look up and there's bats living up there in your siding or in your chimney. And then leaving dead trees on your property if you aren't afraid of them falling on your house is always a great place for bats to live instead of in your house. Or you can also put up a bat house like this one. This one I have up on my chimney. You don't really want to put bat houses on your trees because then the snakes can crawl into them. But if they're up here on your chimney, they're snake free. Bats can rest in peace. And I really like the Bat Conservation International website for finding more information about bat houses and how to support bats. So first hard frost is coming. I know we've had some frosts already, but don't kill your hoses, put them away before the first frost. If you have ponds that you need to winterize, now's the time to think about that. Your rain barrels don't like freezing either. I know we busted out 6 rain barrels once in one freeze. That was not great. So open up your drains and let them drain out. You can also kill a bird bath with a freeze. But if you can, put some sort of water heater in your bird bath because the birds really like having water all through the winter. So save your infrastructure and also make your birds happy with a heater. It's also a good time to clean your gutters, clean out your rain barrels, install some sort of winter-friendly water feature. They have heated bird baths, and then they also have those little heaters you can set in your bird bath. And those you can also stick those in the pond too. So now we are going to have Kalo. He's going to talk about taking care of your tools. You can see my tools here. They need to be taken care of. I've got a dirty shovel. I've got a twisted tine. I need some help. I'll stop my share here. There he is. You're on mute.
Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Alrighty.
Laura, can you make him like the main screen? I know there's a way to do that somehow. There, better. All right, we can see you.
Alrighty. Hi there. My name's Kalo Hoyle. I work with Pretty City Garden and Landscapes, and I've been there for several years now. But yeah, I'll have some tools here in my basement. It's actually our yoga studio, but you know, I can make it work. But I'm just going to give some basic demonstrations of good practices for maintaining tools. Obviously, everyone has different toolkits and whatnot, and everything has sort of different needs, but these are just like the good standby stuff. I imagine many of you are familiar with this stuff as well, but we'll go over some basic stuff. Like you were talking about, spades are really important to keep sharp if you're actually going to be cutting anything or taking out roots or whatever you're using these for planting. They get dull really fast. I don't know if you can see mine at all, but usually they're a single-sided blade, which means that you do not want to be sharpening on both sides. And this is a very common mistake people make when they're learning how to sharpen stuff. Usually there'll be a clearly indicated beveled side that will show you that this blade should only be sharpened from this side. You can sharpen from your other end to end up with a finer point, but you're going to end up causing a lot of additional wear on your tool because you're not going to actually be able to continually work that edge and keep it sort of aligned. It'll just kind of mean you have to sharpen more often if you end up having to do stuff like that. Tools I usually, so for the landscape company I work for, we have a grindstone that I would do all this stuff on. If you have one of those in your house or in your garage or whatever, they're fantastic for doing this kind of work. They're really fast and they'll just take that edge right off, and really quick and easy. You can also switch over here so I can see my chair. You can also use any kind of large abrasive metal file like this one here. I've also got like a saw file as well, which I use for maintaining saw blades, but I find these actually work quite well on taking off edges on like spades and other sharp tools you might want. But you're just going to take the tool. Usually I like having it something you can rest it against. You're not going to be able to hear me at all if I'm filing, but I just like will pinch it up against the thing I want to brace the tool on, and then you usually are just trying to do a pretty fast swiping motion. Again, on the side where you have your bevel already or the indent on the tool, and then you're just going to work it down. For like a spade, you don't actually need it to be like razor sharp, right? Because then it's just going to dent terribly easy. The main thing you're trying to maintain is you're going to have all these nicks and dings in a tool like this from where you hit a rock or where you hit a particularly hard stump. And those are the things that are actually going to get you caught up when you're trying to work or cut things down. And those are the main parts that you're trying to file out. So when I'm filing, I'm usually looking just to go far enough down on the edge that I'm taking out those components. And I want the alignment of this tool to be as close to the angle of my already existing edge as I can. It's sort of hard to show this visually. Maybe sorry, too much wagging. But I'm just trying to match that angle as closely as I can. This one's got a paper, and then just go along that until, can I kind of demonstrate this? Like I've got this ding right here. It's so hard to show that with a camera. But this ding, especially being in the center of the spade, is going to just cause me a lot of extra time when I'm trying to excavate stuff. So that's like one of those clear sort of indicators of what you want to be doing. So anyway, that's like good general tool maintenance for one of these. The other step that is key to maintaining a tool like this, you can see I have a lot of dirt on this, debris and whatnot, and getting them incredibly clean, which usually you just would start with water and soak them down real well, and then having some kind of metal brush like this that you can use to just abrasively rub all of that dirt off and scrape the tool incredibly well. And then after you've actually got it clean and dry, because you don't want any of that water sitting on it or you're going to cause rust, then you want to use one of many like metal oils. One of the most popular ones, the one we use because it's fairly cheap, is just linseed oil. So you would just lather the thing in linseed oil, let that sit. Usually you don't want to like be touching it for like 2 or 3 days so that the oil absorbs into the metal thoroughly and sets really hard. And it keeps your tool really clean. It means it's more waterproof. So if you do end up working in water spaces or wet gardens, it'll keep the tool in better shape for a lot longer. There's also like other alternatives. Like I use like a tongue oil and beeswax mix that I make myself that also coats. It's also just less, it's a little more food safe. So if I'm using tools that I'm going to be like pruning food with and stuff, that can be something you can be thinking about. The other main tools that I use for landscaping are going to be my hand tools. So my pruner and my soil knife here. And these I try to keep as sharp as I can at all times. This is more extreme in its sharpness. Obviously, a pruner, you want it as razor sharp as you can possibly get. There's a slightly different set of tools. I would not use a file on things like this because it's going to be too abrasive and you're going to take a lot of the tool away. But there's this fantastic tool. There's like Corona. If you look it up online, you can find them really easily. But they're this tiny hand file for sharpening tools like this. And these ones, you would just take a blade. I tend to prefer taking my blade off when I'm doing this because it gives me a little more control of what I'm doing, but you can do it with the blade on. But basically, again, you can see on a pruner especially, there's the flat side that's coming up against your brace, this side of your pruner, and you do not sharpen that side. You're going to ruin your pruner if you do that. You want to sharpen the side that, again, has that bevel, that edge that has no metal on it. And you're just going to take, like this is a perfect tool for it. You just take it against the grain and then you're just going to slowly file that away. And it's great. You can have this out, in the garden while you're working if you're doing particular stuff. It's really a perfect tool for doing that. You can also work these with a whetstone if any of you want to get extreme with the sharpness on this, or if you're needing to remove more material. Sometimes on my pruner, I'm just kind of keeping the edge maintained, where like on a soil knife, it's again hard to see, but mine's totally edgeless, partially just because I use it so much. But for this, you can use sort of a similar process, though sometimes I like running it on a whetstone to kind of improve that edge. Yeah, I don't want to ramble too much further on, so I hope that's kind of helpful and orienting with your sort of general tool maintenance. And again, just to reiterate, getting all of these tools oiled, especially when you're going to store them for the winter and you may not be using them again for, several months, is really key. Otherwise, you will end up with rust build up on those tools, and it will just be more work when you're trying to do that in the spring or do whatever work you have.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I always take care of my tools in the like late fall time, but how often other times do you sharpen your tools?
Yeah, so I'm doing this every day all year. So I'm sharpening stuff like on a monthly basis, sometimes more often if I've been using my pruners exhaustively. The pruners are definitely any like loppers, pruners, shears of any kind. Those are the ones that you're just going to get the most out of continually sharpening, because those edges, having that really sharp edge for your pruner. I mean, I'm sure everyone's, you get your new pruner and it just like slices through stuff and it's so easy and fun to use. And then like 2 or 3 months in, it starts like snagging on stuff. So I do it frequently, but you could certainly do it less frequently if you're not using them excessively. And
having those nice clean cuts is better for the plants too.
100%, yes. And additionally, with pruners, you also want to be wary of sanitation for these too, and having them clean makes it a lot easier to sanitize these. So if you're like pruning something that might be infected or something, after you've cleared it, making sure that it gets cleaned after that point, and then sanitizing with like some isopropyl or any kind of harsh alcohol to help kill off any bacteria or viral entities on the pruner. so you don't spread that around your garden.
Do you do any sanitation of your shovels to make sure you're not spreading the jumping worms?
We don't tend to see them in the areas that we're working in, so it hasn't come up for us. But that would be something we would be wary of if we were seeing them, yeah.
I wonder if just water works or if you have to use soap on those. I've heard that solarizing them works.
Yeah, if you're getting your tools out, that's like a general thing is we try not to, like if we're doing a site, we try to make sure that those tools are cleaned before we move on to another site regardless. So that we're not transplanting that dirt immediately into new spaces. That's like a great ideal, obviously. It doesn't always happen as perfectly as you would hope, but yeah, trying to just let the tool dry out or clean it immediately after you finish that process. And then I think for letting the oil set, so if you are linseeding or doing some kind of maintenance, general material maintenance on it, linseed sitting out in the sun really does a lot to help set it. And I would imagine that probably does a good job of protecting the seeds, I mean the eggs from the jumping worm.
Yeah. Also, I'm always like cursing the lawn companies because they're spreading all sorts of seeds around with their mowers because they go and mow some weed and then take it to the next yard.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. We work mostly in the city, and it's always very impressive how quickly, just generally how quickly that we move all of the seeds around the city, and not just us, but just the whole industry of green work.
Yeah.
People doing any kind of lawn work or moving seed around very quickly.
Yeah. Well, and even on your own property, you can
Yeah.
mow something down in the along the road, and then all of a sudden it's coming up throughout your yard. So
Yeah, that's how I got my blue vervain. I was digging in someone else's yard. I didn't even bring any seed. I just somehow it stuck to me.
I used to have a coworker, and we called him Larry Sedge Fingers because everything he touched came up with sedges.
Oh, that's a magical power. That's a good one.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and I'm really glad that you were willing to do that demonstration for us.
Oh, my pleasure. And again, I would say if you do end up getting any tool to help you out with this stuff, I think she showed a link, but this is a really fantastic tool for just keeping those edges. And yeah, in like you're digging and you hit some large chunk with your spade or one of your larger tools. I saw you had like a razor hoe, and this works really well on those as well. So even if you don't spend the time to file down the whole edge, these really are a great thing to have on hand.
There's nothing like starting spring with fresh, sharp tools.
It's the most fun part of the year to actually use them. I get bogged down because I'm like sharpening like 40 or 50 tools every month, so it's less fun in my world, but
Yeah. Maybe we should have a Wild Ones tool sharpening party with a grindstone.
It makes it way faster. If you're trying to maintain spades, like if you're doing a lot of spade work, I would say get yourself a grindstone because the hand filing works, and if you have a good file, it will make pretty quick work of it. But
I wanted to ask about that time length. We did get a good view of those dents in your spade. So how long would that take with that hand file, and how long would it take with the stone?
I'm not having to go terribly long on it. Again, for a spade, I'm usually not trying to get an incredibly sharp edge. Like again, edges are always so hard to show. You can see this is pretty wide, it's probably like I'm so bad with gauging widths, but it's not particularly thin. It's more about making sure that your flat side is actually flat, and then this side's meeting it, and you don't have those dents. So I wouldn't say I have to go very far before I don't have any big chunks missing out of it anymore, but it's still not particularly sharp. Because I mean, you can get these razor sharp if you want to. It just doesn't actually help that much because it helps you for about 15 minutes. And then because you've made this edge so fine, you end up just getting really big chunks pretty quickly in that edge. So it's just kind of counterproductive, at least in my experience. So I tend to just take, like, if I have the file, where did I put it? I have a file, again, I'll just pin the tool, and then I'll just find those spots. And as long as my edge stays relatively straight, I'll just kind of
It seems like something that you practice and you get better at it every year.
For sure, yeah. But like that's already a huge difference. Again, it's impossible to show this, but it just now I only have a couple chunks. It's not that big a deal, and the tool's going to do its job really well. Now, I mean, if you're not using them as often as I am, you know, you might as well get them pretty sharp. And it does depend on what you're doing. I'm using these are like solid steel ones. These are also not like a cell, but these solid steel spades like this are fantastic. They're just the heaviest duty thing you would ever need. So if you're ever trying to excavate like a stump or anything like that, these can handle doing all sorts of that kind of work. And they're really forgot what I was saying, but
Okay.
they're really good to get sharp if you're trying to cut through material, because like you can use these to stab through or puncture or punch through roots and that sort of thing pretty well. So if you are doing that kind of work, you can get it really sharp and it will do that job for you. It's not always the like ideal tool for that. I would recommend moving to like a an axe or some kind of hacking tool, but not everyone wants to buy 100 tools.
I don't know if this crowd is the one. I think this crowd's the one that has lots of tools. So
Well,
they're
that's
like, oh, new tool, let's go get it.
Well, then I'd also recommend in your garage, I saw one, I had already mentioned it, but those razor hoes are also super fantastic tools for, if you keep them really sharp, they do an incredible job of being able to tear up a huge area very quickly and take out
Yeah.
any material you're worried about.
They're good for getting down to the dirt.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or anything?
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and thank Cody for volunteering you too.
Oh, yeah. I'll let him.
We're happy you're here. So the one he was talking about is this tool right here. It looks like I call it my stirrup hoe, but you just kind of use it like a normal hoe, and it takes care of weeds really well. Are there any other unrelated questions at this point? Not related to Kalo, any other questions? Okay, so now I have a boring slide. I couldn't figure out how to make this slide more interesting, but so nurturing garden soil. So in the soil, we have lots of little bacterias and fungi and all sorts of little critters in there. And when you're in a prairie, the soil there is very different than the soil in your backyard. And there's a lot of ways that the soil biota can be killed. Like if you have no ground cover on top of it, like if it's just left out there baking, that can kill them. If you're tilling it, If you're have vehicles growing over it, so the soil's compacted. If you have your house construction and the soil layers get turned upside down. So, and then also you can just use poisons and kill all that stuff. And even if you do have like a lawn that's been there for 100 years, the biota that goes with lawns or honeysuckle is very different than the type that goes with native plants. So some of our native plants that are really hard to grow, that are endemic to a certain habitat, are hard to grow in our yards just because we don't have the right soil for them. So part of when you're transforming your yard from lawn into a garden is you're trying to build the soil up in order to support those plants. And so that's why sometimes you got to go with the easier, weedier plants for a while until they've built the soil up so it's a suitable habitat for the trickier plants. So I guess this is like a roundabout explanation that if your plant you bought died, maybe it's not your fault, it's probably your soil's fault. So you just got to be nicer to your soil, more compost, keep growing the plants that work, and try again with that plant maybe in another 5 years. And don't rake your leaves. Leaves are great for soil. And they're not going to break into your house and steal all your wine. You should tell your neighbors that too. I'm sure they'll think it's amazing. Now is the time you can put out bird feeders. It's also a good time to clean your bird houses out for the winter. And there's still a lot of seeds out there in our native gardens, but if you want to supplement them through the winter, now is a good time to start. You need to make sure that your bird feeders are cleaned because there's all sorts of weird diseases that birds can get from bird feeders, where one sick bird comes to the feeder and then spreads it to the rest of your population. So if you are seeing sick birds at your feeder, you need to clean your feeder, and you might need to stop feeding or at least clean your feeder every time you fill it. Birds also like unfrozen drinking water for drinking and bathing. All right, this is a sad tree. This is how you don't plant a tree here. So whoever planted this tree did not spread the roots out. It was probably, they plunked it out of the pot and straight into the ground, and the tree grew up and then it died. And you can see why. Its roots are just in this mess of a ball, and they're strangling each other, and it's not reaching out into the soil to get nutrients from the around the area. So right now is a great time to plant trees, especially after it starts raining next week, hopefully. Like right now it is still too dry because of our drought, but generally this month is a great time to plant trees. And once it starts raining, go out there and plant some trees. So you need to make a really big hole to make sure your soil is loosened up all around the tree. And on the tree, you can kind of feel the area where the roots go up to and the trunk starts. Usually it's a little bit wider, and that's where you want the dirt to go to. Like a lot of times when you get a pot from a nursery, the dirt in the pot is higher than it should be in the ground. You need to go find where that bulge is and just plant to that level. Don't plant your trees in a tree basket. If your tree is tied to a stick, make sure that all the things that are tying it, either take them off or make sure they're loose enough that you're not going to strangle that tree with a string. A lot of times the roots are kind of in this swirl going on in the pot, and you need to untangle them because they need to go out straight and find some nutrients out in the soil and spread out across the yard, which might mean that you end up with a really weird shaped hole because your roots are going one direction and not the other, but make sure you spread them all out. Put mulch around your tree, but don't make any volcanoes. You got to make donuts, not volcanoes. And then water your tree thoroughly, and keep watering it, especially in this drought. Make sure you keep watering. You need to keep watering trees through the winter if there's a drought. So if it's snowing plenty, then you don't need to water them. But when it's like this, if it's a new tree, it needs to be watered. Hey, we had a question come in, and they were asking about rigid goldenrod as being aggressive, which that's one of the aggressive ones. And they're cutting off the blooms and putting it in yard waste, which is what I do with my seeds. I actually have two different yard waste piles. I have one that is like in a composter where I can actually make sure it turns into compost all the way, and that's where I put seeds that I don't want to sprout. And so I put it in there. I mix in my food scraps. I also mix in my rabbit poop, so it's a nice composted, like thoroughly composted compost. And then I have another compost pile, which is more of like just a yard waste pile. And plants that don't have seeds or aren't invasive plants, they can go in that pile, and sometimes they're only half composted before I start using them. So I'm not sure if this person's sending their compost out or not, but generally if you are shipping your compost to a composting facility, they will compost things all the way. They have hot composting there. She saw very few insects on these plants, and a goldenrod usually has a lot of insects that use it. I don't know if that was just the year or I'm not sure. As anybody wants to chime in if they have rigid goldenrod, seeing a lack of insects. And then what's a good website to sort out these questions? And so I'm suggesting the Grow Native native plant database. Does anyone else have any suggestions? You can put that in the chat for a good website for plant questions, but they do have a page just for rigid goldenrod. They call it stiff goldenrod, but it has information about how aggressive it is and how it spreads. So I hope that answered that question. So now we're looking at more color this month. So my aromatic aster is just starting to bloom right now. It's going great. Bees are all over it. I know I've seen some gentians also blooming. Some of the other asters are still hanging on. There's a little bit of goldenrod blooming. We also have fall color in the plants. So this is a goldenrod here that's blooming and also has red leaves. This is beard tongue, I think, huntsman. And then over here on the right is one of those annuals, the waxweed. So now we have some red, maroon. I don't know what this is. This is a red oak. We have a monarda here. And then copper iris has copper iris sometimes blooms twice. So we have a fall bloom going on with copper iris. Yellow, we have shining blue star. This is brown-eyed Susan, black-eyed Susan, still blooming. Green, like not everything's green anymore, but still this is beet grain. Beet grain's pretty aggressive. Actually, all three of these are pretty aggressive, so beware, but I love beet grain. I love the way it holds snow in the winter, and it does stay green pretty long. On the left here, we have the wild strawberries, which has this nice red fall color too. And then on the right is the golden seal. Not golden seal. It is
Golden groundsel.
golden groundsel. Right. Groundsel. Which is another great ground cover. And those yellow things there are just silver maple leaves. That's not part of the plant. It'd be nice if it had yellow leaves, but it just turns brown. We also have brown, so we have some little blue stem here on the left. And then we got some ferns with their fertile fronds are nice black and they stand up through the winter and the leaves turn brown and fall down. And then on the right is my ashy sunflower that turns that nice grayish color and is stiff and stands up really well. So you guys have homework. Let's count how many shades of brown you have in your yard. See how many shades you can get. So and then maybe try to name them. I don't even know the colors for all these shades of brown, but see how many you could find. And textures are also great too. Like there's a lot of fuzziness and spikies and rigid things. All right, are there any more questions we have today?
This is Marcia, I put one in the chat about when you were talking about putting up bird feeders, but also all of the seed heads that are in our gardens still. I just wonder what birds there are that need something more than what they can find in our varied seed-laden native landscapes.
I think the main thing would be if there's flocks of birds coming through that are migrating, they might need more than just your backyard can handle. But I know you personally have quite a smorgasbord there for the birds. But having lots of different varieties of fruit, because those are high sugars for them flying, and then lots of different types of seed heads. So variety is key. And also feeding the birds does bring them closer to your window so you can look at them. And sometimes in the winter, being able to see something that's alive just helps us feel better.
What about woodpeckers? It seems like I don't see them much unless they come to a feeder, you know.
Yeah, I hear them a lot out in the trees, so they must be doing something. But yeah,
So they're getting.
I give them suet too. You need a big dead tree for your woodpecker.
Woodpeckers eat a lot of insects.
Yeah, that are still up there in the grooves of the bark and such, huh?
And in the rotten parts of a dead tree.
Mm.
Yeah. And a lot of birds also like they stash seeds and nuts in the bark of trees, so they might be trying to excavate those too.
Mm. Thanks.
Okay, our next and also last monthly gathering of this sort is going to be on December 4th. Same time, same place. And I will see you then. And I'll probably also see most of you next week too at the seed exchange. So
Yay.
everybody do your rain dance. Hopefully we'll get some rain soon.
Yeah, it's supposed to come tonight for sure.
Yeah. I don't hear it yet though. So keep dancing till it comes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right.
guys.
Good night, everybody.
Thank
night.
you. Enjoyed
Thank
this.
you.
Learned from it.
Good night.